Welcome to the very first Road Race Report podcast. This has been a long time coming, and honestly, the goal is so simple, to bring you guys closer to American road racing, real conversations, real insight, and a perspective that is brought to you from straight inside the paddock. We'll be at every race. You found us. We're super happy you're here, and honestly, to be bringing you coverage from all things American road racing starting this year and hopefully going forward. This season marks the 50th anniversary of proper superbike racing in the U.S. from Steve McLaughlin's iconic win on a BMW in the 1976 Daytona 200 to now. The series has evolved and grown and shrunk multiple times and is still in a constant state of evolution. And that doesn't change for the 50th season. MotoAmerica is in a super interesting place. The talent pool is deep. The grid's evolving with Stock 1000 going away and a few other new faces coming into the mix, faces leaving the mix in Superbike. The season has us all kind of asking a lot of questions. So to kick it off the right way, we're going to get right into it. We're going to do a full 2026 MotoAmerica Superbike preview. And I couldn't think of two better guys to do it with than the boys from Pipe Dreams podcast, current MotoAmerica riders themselves, Corey Alexander and James Rispoli. We're going to break down the title picture, key riders, team dynamics, where the season could be decided, and what we're looking at for Road Atlanta. But before we get into it, we've got to shout out our first and currently only sponsor of Road Race Report, Sansoda's Fresh Italian. This episode is brought to you by Sansoda's Fresh Italian. If you know, you know. If you don't, Sansoda's is all about doing things the right way, fresh ingredients, authentic recipes, and no shortcuts. Whether it's pasta, salads, sandwiches, soups, catering for your next event, it's real Italian food made with intention. It's the same mindset we're bringing to Road Race Report, quality over everything. So if you're in the area for Mid-Ohio or racing flat track at Harpster with the Triangle Motorcycle Club, please be sure to check out Sansoda's Fresh Italian and support the people who support this show and Road Race Report as a whole. And that said, if you'd like to support the show, we've got merch live on the site. Your support funds our trips to the races and brings you the coverage that we're hoping you're enjoying just from these first two rounds that we've done. And yeah, that's it on the ad front. If you would like to advertise with us, Anthony at roadracereport.com. We'll be doing shows weekly, similar to what we see on the Supercross and Motocross side. I really want to bring the Pulp MX style coverage, race breakdowns, pre-race shows. We're going to do some track preview stuff. Really excited to get this stuff up and running. This one has been a bit of a labor of love getting this out into the world, but we've got the process dialed. And yeah, we're excited to do more all year. Hopefully we'll be doing some of these from the paddock. We'll be doing podcast with some of the legends of the sport and also some of the current guys. So, all right, that's enough for me. Let's get into it. The 2026 MotoAmerica Superbike preview with Corey Alexander and James Rispoli. Road Race Report's first ever podcast. Welcome, Corey and James from Pipe Dreams. Boys, how's it going?
It's good, man. This feels a little bit different for me. Like normally we're the ones doing a little bit of the interviewing and things, but this feels a little bit different. But no, excited to run through this, something that I actually wanted to do as well. I mean, Corey knows I love talking about the series and racing, period. I watch all the MotoGPs and that. So I'm excited to run through this with you.
Yeah, sweet. Corey, what's happening on your end?
Yeah, same here. I'm hanging out in New York, actually getting a tire change on my car. Wasn't expected to be sitting here still, but I am, and just enjoying some downtime. We're not racing Atlanta, so it's kind of weird. I feel like I don't know what's going on at the moment. It feels like midwinter, like off season again at the moment. We've just got like a big 2-month break, so yeah, it's been kind of nice to be home, deep in the wedding planning, and that's about it. Just kind of enjoying some downtime.
Yeah, I love it. Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
Well, sweet. Thanks again for joining, boys. I'm going to start this off. I'm just going to run through the teams that we have and riders because so much has changed, obviously. I feel like every year kind of has its favorites when we're going in. But this one, when I was looking through it, and I don't know how you guys felt, but it felt a little different just because there's been so much change and so many many different faces changing teams. So a little bit of a crazy, silly season. We have Warhorse, HSBK, Flo Ferrall, Ducati with Cameron Bobier and Ben Smith. Obviously a huge one there. Can't wait to get to that. We got Ray Hall, Ducati Moto with Expel, and PJ Jacobson moving up to Superbike. Another interesting one. Attack Yamaha, Bobby Fong and JD Beach. JD Beach moving back up to Superbike, proper Superbike. Strack Yamaha moving into the class with Schulte. So yeah, another interesting one. And then we've got Brandon Pash and Richie Escalante on M4 X-Star Suzuki. Real Steel Honda has Hayden Gillum and Andrew Lee. Andrew Lee's the new face there, taking the place of JD Beach. Jones Honda, Ashton Yates, they're proper Superbike this year. So no Superbike Cup for them. Looking forward to that. And then, yeah, Orange Cap BMW, Jason Uribe and SDK, Sean Dillon Kelly, another interesting one. Let's just start at general. What James makes the 2026 Superbike season feel a little different for you from last year?
Yeah, I think the first thing that we have to talk about is how many different good packages there are, right? For me,
Yep.
there's a lot of good motorcycles that can win, and in America, for a long time, there's usually only been, one good Ducati, a good Yamaha, and maybe a BMW. And I feel like this year we have upwards of five motorcycles or five teams that have proper superbike equipment with full electronics guys, full, real superbikes that can, essentially go for a win. So for me, I think that's the biggest difference that we see is the, you know, budgets and the motorcycles and capabilities of these teams.
Yeah, I mean, I would totally agree with what James was saying. I think that as a fan, it's like a pretty exciting time to be watching. Actually, some of those names on that list I didn't even realize, so kind of learned a little bit. I didn't realize Ashton was doing the full Superbike. So yeah, it seems like with the way them getting rid of Super Stock this year, kind of made Superbike a little bit more exciting. I think,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it'll be interesting as a whole. I think one of the other ones I actually just read was Shaibi. I think they got Alex Dumas actually coming down on
Yep.
another full superbike. So yeah, it's honestly, I mean, I think there's like 6, 7 guys now that could actually win races. I think this is the first year in a long time you'll see that. I don't know how many different winners there were last year, but for
Yep.
sure this year. I'm excited as a fan and somebody who's kind of like I'm spending a little more time at home on the couch, so I'm actually gonna be able to watch. I actually kind of want to go to some races just to watch at this point, which is pretty cool, you know.
Yep.
I think yeah, that Ducati will be interesting. I don't know if you guys saw the BSB testing. Was it Kyle Reed, James? That
Kyle
was on
Ride, yeah.
Kyle Ride. He's on a stalker, like full stock
Mhm.
street spec and top the time charts. Um, that's got to be pretty scary
That's
knowing that
impressive.
Cam Bobier is jumping on one of those things. So yeah, it'll be fun to watch.
Yeah, for sure. Last year, I was just looking on the side here. Last year, we had 4 winners, and it looks like 7 different podium finishers. So pretty good. But yeah, I'm hoping we see more winners than that this year. I think it's definitely possible. We'll start right at the top here. You had just mentioned it. Cam Bobia and Ben Smith at Warhorse, a team that has championship pedigree. They've got, I think, a little more even help than they've previously had from Ducati. I know we saw Cam testing overseas. It ended up being kind of a rain out type deal, but time with the engineers, time around Ducati. My understanding was their bikes maybe were even built in the factory over there following that test and sent over. So some serious Ducati support in the paddock, which is one super cool, but also pretty wild to see that Cam Bobier is going to swing his leg over that thing. Corey, what are your thoughts on Bobier? Is it immediately out of the gate? I think one thing to consider, and one thing I'll ask you guys is like, okay, new bike, new team environment. How much is that a factor going into this? I mean, it's Cam, so he clearly can get on anything and go well, but how much does that factor in? And what are your thoughts on Warhorse going into the season?
Yeah, I mean, I think of all the Ducati teams that they're probably gonna be the most put together right off the jump, just because Cam got on the bike a little bit earlier. I think everyone, from what I understand, everyone that does one of those kind of customer programs with Ducati. They actually go and build those superbikes at Ducati Corsa. That's part of the deal. So they have to go over and then they ship them back. So
Yep.
I think the Warhorse guys maybe got to do that a little bit earlier because Cam actually rode the bike, like you said.
Mhm.
Whereas I think
Yep.
I just saw something that looked like maybe the Rahal guys were just doing it like this past week, so or
Yeah.
a couple weeks ago. So I don't know how much time those guys have had with the bikes, which is a little bit tough. You know what I mean? So I think Cam's definitely
Yep.
got a leg up on that. They've also had a long-standing relationship with Ducati, so there's a little bit more on the table there.
Yep.
It's hard to bet against Cam anytime.
Yeah. Yep. James, any thoughts outside of that? I mean, Corey kind of hit the nail on
Yeah,
the head for what I think too.
Yeah, I don't think we can really bet against Cambodia, especially at Atlanta. The guy has had, very good pedigree there. He's
Yep.
been super fast. I think that motorcycle is going to be unreal underneath him. The one thing that we have to remember here is that the tires, right? Those
Mhm.
bikes are being fully built around Pirelli tires, and then they throw Dunlops in them, and it causes a little bit of chaos. So could there be some teething, issues for Cam? Yes, but if anybody can ride a motorcycle that isn't that well, we saw on the BMW how good he did. He was one of the very few people that can make that BMW work at all the tracks. I mean, he won the championship on it, and yeah, so I think he's kind of a shoe-in right away. I don't think there's going to be really too much teething issues. I will say what Corey said is I think they're actually even further behind schedule than everybody thought when they were getting the bikes. I mean, I know the BSB boys are just getting bikes now,
Yep.
and I know that you know it's a struggle to get stuff, and I think we saw in Ben Spies's story the Ray Hall bike was there, but I don't think PJ was there riding. So I think Atlanta's going to be interesting for those boys, the Ducatis specifically on that new double swing arm. There's a couple new bits and pieces, and Atlanta isn't a typical, you know, FIM track where those bikes really excel. They excel on very fast, flowy, super smooth, not a lot of bumps, not a lot of G outs and stuff like, or not G outs, but a lot of elevation and stuff like that. So I think, yeah, it'll be interesting, but you can never count Cambodia out.
Yeah, for sure. And then obviously the other side of that garage, Ben Smith. Ben had some pretty solid results last year. Moving into a team like this, having Cam as your teammate, knowing the information swap that can happen, and someone that, I mean, Ben seems super motivated. I have not met Ben yet, so I'm looking forward to that. But he seems super motivated and seems to have his head on straight. So what do we think on that front? I mean, obviously trending upward for sure.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think Ben hasn't really had a good showing the last few years just because of his circumstances with the teams he was working with and the package he had underneath him. I think he won KTM like 390 championship growing up, and he was kind of like had a promising, I want to say amateur career, but when he was kind of just getting into the paddock and hasn't really had the opportunity to show what he's got. And I think obviously that bike, that crew is a team that's the package to be on. And
Yep.
so I think he could be surprising. I know his work ethic is there for sure, and he's talented. I think it's just a matter of if he's got the right people around him and the right bike. I think that's somebody that people are probably just counting out a little bit because he's teammates with Cam and looking at his past results.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things. But at the same time, it's kind of
Yep.
I've been in that position too, where it's a little bit nice where you have a guy who's like Cam's expected to win, and he's got the pressure of like
Yep.
kind of carrying the team. Ben can kind of just chip away at it and surprise people, and that's always a fun spot to be in.
Yep. Finished 12th last year in the season points, and yeah, had some solid finishes in there. So yeah, curious to see how he does.
I would say probably like half of them are DNFs, right? I mean, I think more
Yeah,
times
there
than
was
not.
there was quite a few. There's 6 or 7 of them. So yeah,
So it'll be
it's
nice for
tough.
him to get on a bike that's running. I'm sure that's nothing more frustrating than when you can't even show your potential because your bike won't get around the track. So, yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. James, we'll move on to PJ. PJ is moving into Superbike here this year. Thoughts on PJ? Thoughts obviously the Rahal program is going to be pretty well put together. Like we said, they have some teething issues to get through with just getting the bikes and him just getting on the bikes here coming into Atlanta. But what are our thoughts, PJ Jacobson?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting one, right? Like, I think no one ever doubts PJ's talent. The guy's been around the world, second
Yep.
in world super sport, is racing against some of the fastest guys in the world. So I don't think anybody ever doubts PJ and his raw speed and talent. Now, they do have three other motorcycles under that tent, and then to run a superbike program, I think is going to be a little bit tougher than,
Yep.
say, Warhorse just running two superbikes and not have to deal with that, Corey can definitely attest to running three bikes under a tent and how many moving parts that is just in personnel and parts. If everybody starts crashing, I mean, things get tough and garage energy and vibes turn very, very quickly. And
Yep.
if you've got a brand new super bike that you're trying to build and, nurture, yeah. Do I think he's going to be at the front? 100%. If they got that bike running and working, I think he'll be in the top three most weekends. Um, and I think that he's got a real good shot, and it looks like he's got a ton of motivation. He's been hanging out with Kayla in this off season. He's been doing a lot of coaching, and it looks like he's been motivated on training. Like, I've seen him doing a lot of good runs and things of that nature, and it looks like just a different PJ to me, where he's
Mhm.
a little bit more centered, a little less worried about what's going on around him, and he seems a little bit more confident to me and less second guessing. And I think that's a scary PJ Jacobson.
Yeah, I mean, I could tell just by the 200, even speaking to him after, obviously terrible what happens, right? But he's still just like, yeah, man, like it was win or what. I was going to win this thing, or we were going to slide it down the road, and that was going to be what it was going to be. Like, you could tell he was locked in and ready, and then it just seemed to even fuel the fire more for the superbike stuff. So, yeah,
Did
looking
he
forward to
say
it.
what happened? Did he just like, I don't
He
want to go too far, but like, I
Yeah.
didn't hear anything, and I'm like, man,
Yep.
I
He did say that he just got in hot trying to take a chance to put a bike between him and Josh, and go fast, take chances. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And I think it would have been the right thing to do. It was the right move in my opinion, and it seemed like he felt that way too, right? Like to try to get one between him and Josh. Um but
yeah, I just
obviously,
it's always interesting to me because like at that point he had like 4 seconds,
yeah.
and it was a second a lap faster. It almost, and obviously you can't race behind, so you don't know,
Yeah, he didn't
and
really have a clue from my understanding. Like, he didn't know what the gap was.
mm,
So,
okay, that makes total sense
yep.
to what happened. So,
Yep.
okay,
Well, let's pop down the list here to Yamaha, dude. JD on a Yamaha. Obviously, Bobby is Bobby, and he was ripping last year and right in the fight all the way to the end. I think it was a Bobby Fong run that none of us really could have predicted coming in. A bummer how it ended, obviously, but I think adding JD to that mix, Jake was having a tough go with injuries and things like that, and I think adding the fuel of JD to that fire could be pretty interesting. Corey, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think firstly, it's just kind of been interesting to watch the whole Jake thing go down. Firstly, like he's
Yeah.
kind of just
Yep.
disappeared, pretty
Yep.
quietly. There hasn't
Mhm.
really been, and unfortunately, that's I think a little bit of how racing is, right? It's like it's pretty unforgiving, and guy was dominating not too long
Yep.
ago, and now he's just like not even talking about him.
Yep.
So have to give him a shout out for that for sure. It's a
Yep.
bummer to not see him out there and not able to get back to where he was because like imagine a healthy Jake Gagne from 3 years ago, like going into this season, it would be such a sick
Dude.
battle. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So that's a
Yep.
bummer. But yeah, as far as Bobby goes, it was heartbreaking for him at the end of the year for it to end like that after the run he had.
Yep.
Hopefully that lit some fire underneath him and the crew coming into this season.
Yep.
And yeah, I'm excited for that. I'm excited to see also what JD does because I think he definitely had a tough go at Superbike on the BMW, and then had
Yep.
to kind of rebuild from the ground up. And at the end of the year on the Honda, what he was doing was impressive. So, and he's a fan favorite, right? So if he's up there, like if you get two good attack Yamahas up in the mix like every weekend, It remains to be seen how they'll do against the BMW and especially the Ducati now. Like, I'm sure Richard's been doing some mad scientist stuff to try to find some more power to compete with those things. But yeah, like, just like I said, if you could get two of those bikes up there every weekend, that would really make the races, every race, like, very interesting. So yeah,
No doubt.
pulling for those guys to figure it out, to be able to run with the European bikes.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's definitely going to be interesting. Just given the fact that I feel like JD was riding so well on the cup bike last year on the Honda. And I know they were having all kinds of teething issues and all kinds of growing pains in that program. And shout out to them. They crushed it. We'll talk about those guys in a little bit, but knowing that he was riding underpowered and, not second rate stuff by any mean, but riding a cup bike in the superbike class and doing as well as he was doing was sick to see. And now knowing that he's kind of have the homecoming back to Yamaha, it's going to be interesting for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing for me is that we know Bob's going to be a championship contender, right? Like he did it all last year. Those bikes that he's racing against aren't really changing that much. I mean, the Ducati is, and it's got Can B, but at the test, we saw that the Yamaha did find some speed, right? Down the back straightaway, it wasn't that far down, and that's really, really good for attack Yamaha, and for the Yamahas. I think he's going to just kind of just continue where he left off. JD, it's amazing to see. Anytime this place anywhere gets moist, he's going to be at the front, like
Yep.
guaranteed. He's a shoo-in to win any race. Um, you like that? And but I also believe that he coming back home to attack after being around at a few other areas, right, on the BMW, having a really really bad year,
Yep.
picking himself back up on the Honda, putting in amazing results, like you said, and kind of getting the feel back and the love back for racing,
Yep.
was really good. And I think that we're going to see a different JD this year. I think he looks, um, he's still focused. He's still, putting in more work than anybody else, during this off season, but he seems a lot more friendly. And I
Yep.
guess what I mean by that is he's more chilled, and I think that's going to do well for him for this season, and especially coming back home.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always interesting to me, like as a spectator, as a fan, right? Seeing guys that have a bad year or for his case, coming back in from flat track, right? And just having to figure it all out again and get up to speed and go through the process, right? Watching guys build momentum. And like you said, I think last year at Honda with Hayden, like he learned how to have fun a little bit more. It seemed like at the track, they were just a good vibe all the time. And so now I'm curious to see that combined with being back at attack. So yeah, interesting stuff over there. We know they'll be.
It'll be interesting to see how Bobby kind of bounces back from the championship loss. Like, if that fire, sometimes that anger, I don't know, it could go both ways too a little bit, right? So like, if he harnesses that and channels it the right way, I think it'll be a useful tool, as long as he's not too angry about it still. So
Yeah, for sure. And then obviously going to Riding World Superbike and having all that happening, switching tires, doing all the things that they have to do when you go over there. It's like, how much is that going to help or hurt? I think it's probably a non-factor, right? But yeah, very curious to see how it goes. I'm curious to see how his off season was.
I think one other thing to add is he had such a great relationship with Jake. It'll be interesting to see the team dynamic and how, I know JD's cool, but I've never been a teammate with him. So it'll be interesting to see how, JD steps back into what previously was his, kind of home at Yamaha, and how that affects Bobby a little bit, because that could change the vibe a little bit.
Yeah.
As we said in the beginning, Jake is so cool, and he's so cool to be around, that you can kind of make your own energy underneath the tent, and it'll be interesting to see how that vibe shakes out.
Yep. Yeah, it's a great call for sure. We'll stay on the Yamaha train here. Strack and Matthew Skoltz moving up to Superbike. Obviously, Matthew's had time on 1000s. Corey, what's your take on the Strat guys? I personally think that, you know, they're a pretty strong outfit, and I think that this year is going to be really telling to see how they'll make the jump.
Yeah, I mean they've done a lot of testing, just like Richard always does. They're pretty busy out at Podium Club, and Matthew seemed to be out there every time they were out there, kind of as almost like a third rider. So I think they're pretty tied in with Attack. I think the bike they're on is identical, and
Dope.
so yeah, I mean I'm sure Matthew's hungry. I'm sure this is for him. It's got to feel like the first time he's got an equal opportunity to the factory boys as far as equipment goes, and I mean I think I don't think it hurts to go back to super sport for 2 years and kind of like resharpen that skill set of like having to make a little bike go around a track really fast and then bump back up. I think, if you kind of apply some of that, it might give him a little bit of an advantage actually. Having that kind of
Yep.
one racecraft. Him and PJ were duking it out for 2 years, but also just like the approach of making a lap on a super sport bike is a little bit different than on a super bike. So you might see a Matthew Skoltz 2.0 superbike rider, and I think that could be really interesting. And I'm sure he wants to make the most of this opportunity because who knows what's going to happen next year. Like I don't know if JD's on a 1 year contract. I don't know. I assume Bobby as well. So Matthew's probably looking at it like, this is my shot to prove myself and move my way back into the factory team where he's never really had the shot at a factory team. So I would have to guess he wants that really bad.
Yeah, I think kind of, same as Corey in that I think that they're on a similar program to what I am with the factory Harley team.
Mhm.
Bikes and parts are getting rolled right out from underneath the factory. I think Yamaha wants to make a statement, and he's done two back-to-back super sport championships, and I think he's the shoe in to be under that tent. I also think that he seems a bit calmer after his two championships, and he seems like a little bit of a different rider. Maybe not at some points, during the years when he gets a little bit heated. If he can control that and continue to work on that in Superbike, I think he could be a threat, week in, week out. The other thing I think is that team is completely different to his old Westby team. The way that they work and react, and I think that that could be a good, help for him to make that step. Wherever we used to see him on the Westby bike of just being a little bit off, whether it be equipment or them doing their own program, you could always see it was just a little bit off, and he always seemed to have it ride a lot harder. So if he can maybe not have to make that little extra step, we won't see some of the crashes and things of that nature, and he can be in the podium fight and maybe be a little bit calmer, cool, collective. But we do know Peter Strack, like that guy wants to win. So he's going to put the investment in. He's got the budget. The team's got the resources to do the job. So it'll be interesting to see how that kind of shakes out.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah, I'm
think
stoked to see it too.
echoing,
I mean, shout out to those guys. You can tell when you're around their truck how serious it is. There's a trainer there working with the guys. They're locked in.
I think kind of echoing what James was saying about him, kind of like he didn't crash pretty much in 2 years in super sport. I don't know how many crashes he had. It was like very few and far between compared to his superbike career, where it was like you could count on one Sunday morning pretty regularly before, in warm up. It was like, so I think he got that out of his system, and yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he does in that thing. I don't know, it looked like at Coda, um, they were in okay shape. I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, he was a half second off of SDK at the top. So, and right there, 4/10 off of Bobby. So, yeah, it seems like he's got it pretty well sorted. Obviously, testing is testing, whatever. But yeah, if you're in there and you're that close, you're doing something right. So, um, cool. Well, let's move on
The,
to
the last thing, the last
yep,
thing I want to say about that is I think he just believes in his program, right? He's not jumping into a new team. He's got the same trainer, same crew chief, same crew. Like he believes in that ecosystem. He believes in that movement, and I think that is more than anything. About. I mean, you got to have a good package in a bike, but believing in your boys and your crew and your team is worth so much more than people think.
yep, yeah, that's a great call. I think. You hit the nail on the head with that one for sure. So looking forward to seeing the Strat guys in the Superbike class. We'll move on to the M4 X-Star Suzuki team. Obviously, Richie Escalante returns there with Brandon Pash, who had done a stint on the Suzuki Superbike and is back now. I know Brandon seemed pretty excited about the opportunity. And I may or may not be misquoting this, but I'm 99% sure he told me this feels like a last shot type of vibe. So that was cool to hear and cool to see him kind of taking that approach. I think he seems pretty locked in, and I think talent wise, and you guys will probably echo the same thing. I think BP has some serious talent on a motorcycle. Has just kind of had ups and downs that have kept that from being, I mean, he crashed. If you want to talk about crashing, he crashed that Suzuki Superbike quite a bit throughout his stint on that bike. So yeah, BP is exciting return. Obviously, Richie is going to be right there in the mix. I'm hoping to see him up front as well. I think again, tons of talent. I think the program is pretty solid. So James, what do you think?
Yeah, I think Richie Escalante is maybe one of the most underrated riders in the field. I think he has the talent and can do the job. We do know the M4 Suzuki, that package is old, right? But sometimes being old is okay. And I think that they have, for him, he's been in that ecosystem a long time. So he was just able to just build a little bit more every single year. And in their recent years, their last 2 years, they've really made some big strides, right? They've been on the podium a few times. I think he had an amazing year with SDK pushing him. And I think SDK being in that team last year as a second, knowing he was a front running guy, pushing that team that little extra, they both got on the podium at VIR. I think he was super close, or if he got it on at Coda, and a couple other places that he was in that fight, or that second group that was super close. And so I really think Richie Escalante is going to make another step this year, and I hope he's not fully overshadowed, as there's just more guys with good motorcycles.
Yep.
And then, yeah, like you said with BP, it just really depends what that guy is what you get, right? Like what BP shows up, if it's going to be clowning BP or somebody who's serious. We've seen both sides of it. You can never really tell. I don't really follow much of him anymore. So I don't really know what where he's at, but we saw that he can be pretty close
Yep.
at certain times. And if he is thinking that's the last shot, it'll be good. Hopefully, he takes it seriously and you know does something with it.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree. I think Richie's super underrated. I think for him, like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how many more years he's going to kind of keep doing the same thing on the Suzuki, right? Like, it seems like he chips away at it all year and he gets there, and then he runs into like a string of crashes, and then he takes like 10 steps back, and then he kind of works his way back. And yeah, I don't know how much development's going on over there with M4, if they're getting new parts at all or anything like that. So it's kind of hard to think that things are going to be too much different than they've been the last few years. But fingers crossed on that for Richie and Brandon as well. Like, it would be, again, like, to get both those guys up there every weekend would be super fun to watch. And I think the bike is good, right? It's just missing that little bit of edge that hasn't been developed in so long. So it's definitely, it's got to be frustrating. It's frustrating to watch, honestly, from the side. So
Yep.
we'll see how they do.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, good stuff there. I think, yeah, all the best to those guys. I think, like you said, Suzuki's at the front of Superbike is a staple from all of our childhoods, I think. And so just to see those guys have some good results would be super fulfilling, I think, for them and for kind of everybody that's followed the series forever. Real Steel Honda, Hayden Gillum, obviously returns to that team. Andrew Lee is their Superbike Cup rider, but has obviously been doing a ton of testing. I'm intrigued. I think this Honda was getting close last year. I think Hayden obviously rips. So what do we think Real Steel Honda wise, Corey?
Yeah, I think that's a big development thing. I saw Hayden at the test on pit lane at Coda, like working on a laptop with his gear on pit lane. So like they're still deep in the trenches, I think.
Yep.
I think it would be, yeah, I think it's gonna be a challenge. It'd be tough to say that they're gonna be like a podium contender week in and week out.
Yep.
Obviously, if it rains, Hayden's an animal for sure. There's some tracks where like Barber, I think will be great for them, right? Like the small, shorter tracks. If the bike runs well, I think they'll be in good shape. Even Atlanta, he seems to be a bulldog through that first segment there, and the Honda's
Yep.
definitely not slow, right? So they've got that going for them. But I don't know like where the state of that bike is, if it's truly a true super bike or like are they running a hybrid electronics, like what the deal is. So
Yep.
yeah, I think that's kind of the challenge for them. And Hayden's also got a little bit on his plate, right? Like he was fast in testing in at Daytona on that Indian. So I'm
Yep.
sure there's a lot of focus on that too. So you kind of got to wonder like, where's he putting all his energy? I know doing two different programs like that's not easy at all. So
Yep.
and then as far as Andrew Lee, like definitely have to give him a shout out for kind of being able to land somewhere after the offseason he had. And I know personally, just knowing him, it was a little bit of a challenge because he won a championship and then he kind of
Yeah.
he passed up, so
Whisked
that was
away to the
tough.
side. Yeah.
Yeah, that was tough to see, man. I mean, it's obviously nobody knows the inner dynamics of teams and politics and all that kind of stuff. Obviously,
Yep.
they went with Jason for a reason at Orange Cap, but I think Andrew's got a chip on his shoulder too. So who knows? You saw what JD did on that Honda.
Yep.
Andrew seemed to get on it pretty quickly at Coda and get up to speed within reason pretty well. I think he got into the 11s, right? At the
Uh,
test. He wasn't
yeah.
terribly far.
211-1. So
Yeah.
it's
So I
rolling.
thought that was pretty good for off the jump.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, again, like I feel like kind of a broken record, but seeing a Honda up in the mix would be really great. And I think there will be days where it'll be there, but I know they got a lot of work to do.
Yeah. It's good to see that truck when you roll into the track. I can tell you that. Just
It
to
is.
to
It
see
is. I
that
mean,
truck is cool.
yeah, it's sick. I think it's I know, it's got to be a little bit tough because it looks the part, right? Like
Yeah.
from the outside
Yeah.
looking in, that thing looks like a factory effort, like the factory truck's there. So,
Yep.
sometimes that can work against you a little bit too because people like have this expectation that,
Mhm.
you got the big truck, it looks like you're a factory Honda team, the bikes look factory Honda, but
Yep.
you know, I think if you talk with Hayden and Mark Young, who's running that thing with him,
Yep.
they're doing a lot of they're doing a lot of work themselves over there. So
Oh
yeah,
yeah. Yeah, I
it'll be
saw we were at Coda and Corey and Taylor Knapp were unloading the truck for the Talent Cup kids and like full on working. And so it's definitely it gives the appearance again, looks the part, which is awesome. But it is factory supported, not a full-fledged HRC factory effort, which are two completely different things, as we know. James, anything to echo on the Real Steel guys?
Yeah, for me, I think the biggest thing with Hayden is going to be the amount of team managing he's going to have to do. Like running that whole effort. Like you said, he's got Talent Cup now, boy. Two people underneath that tent,
Yep.
plus running the full program. I know Hayden very well, and I mean it's a tall ask to run that program. To keep
Yep.
the truck and everything rolling and. I mean, he puts a lot of effort in on that, and it only seems like it's getting bigger and bigger. And we know, what happens with that. It just takes more time and effort.
Mhm.
I do echo Corey on the fact that he's got a real shot on the Indian this year. He's got a great package underneath him, and I
Yep.
don't think he wants to let that slide either. But how much focus can you do on both? And if anybody can do it, he's been known to ride three different classes in a day, and win on all, on two of them and, ride really, really well. So, um, Andrew Lee for me, I think is going to be, it's kind of a shame Superstock's gone because it would be really cool to see. And I think he would have a chip on his shoulder to try to back that up and really, throw some shade around like, yeah, you picked the wrong guy kind of deal.
Yep.
Um, but it is great to see him land on that Honda. We know the Honda's good. Corey can definitely speak to riding a super stock bike as his BMW and how good it was in stock form, and then getting on a super bike, how different things can change. And, we saw Beach beat Gillum at a few races. The big one was Mid Ohio when he got on the podium. Does
Yep.
that happen? With so much development, I think it's easier when you can kind of just, hey, you got to do, up, down, and gearing and, a couple little bit of electronics and you kind of, and you either ride it or you don't. So I think it's going to
Yep.
be a great year for him, but I think that team has got a lot on their plate and it is amazing to see Honda there. And I just hope they give him a little bit more support. I know that he went over there, rode for Midori, some HRC stuff started coming. There's stickers on the bikes, but we all know what that really means with HRC. Do you really get anything,
Yep.
or is it just a, hey, here's the body work, here, everything looks great, but, we're going to wait until we really decide to come in.
Yep. Yeah, totally. Totally. Fingers crossed, obviously. HRC, iconic. Um, Speaking of Honda, Jones Honda, Ashton Yates. Ashton Yates, another year. I believe they're a full on Superbike effort this year. Again, not sure what that means in terms of if they're running a hybrid deal, like you said, Corey, or if it's full go. We'll find out more in Atlanta. But what do you think, Ashton Yates coming in the season?
Yeah, Ashton's been a talented, got to watch for a long time now. Same thing, hasn't really had an opportunity to really show, I feel like, what he's capable of. But yeah, I think it really depends on what what it is that they've actually got to work with. You know what I mean? I think that if it's a hybrid, then he's going to be in that 6th to 10th place battle more or less. If it's a true superbike, maybe a little bit more so than that. But like James said, you start throwing parts at a bike and electronics and so on. And it doesn't always make it easier. You know what I mean? Sometimes it actually sends you backwards a little bit. So yeah, it's definitely not always the best route to go. You know what I mean? Sometimes you're a little bit better making the most of what you've got. So it'll be interesting
Yep.
to see what they show up with. And I know the Jones guys are smart and scrappy. So yeah, I hope Ashton kind of, because the same kind of thing like with Brandon, like they've been kind of just floating around for a little bit, but have been able to like make forward progress with their careers as far as like results and whatnot, and not by their doing, but just circumstance. So he
Okay.
could definitely use with some good showings for sure, and hopefully that'll kind of further things beyond to where he's able to get a shot on another bike or a real super bike for that matter.
Yep. Yeah, totally. It's interesting you say that, like, and we could harp about this for forever, but it feels like kind of we're on the cusp of where we were in like '08, '09 when it was DMG. And then you guys were obviously the guys that were running out of opportunities because stuff was disappearing and things were, shit was hitting the fan. Now it feels like there's some of these guys that are just on the cusp of finally having a package as the grid starts to fill back out, which is cool to see. I think there's quite a few guys that deserve a proper opportunity to show us what they've got. So yeah, cool to see it. James, anything to add?
Yeah, I think I have a little bit different approach to that. I think Ashton's a little bit different in the way that they have been able to. He's been with Jones after the Scheibe racing. He came to Jones and they started out like literally back of van kind of style and then grown that program into something that I really believe that it is the perfect time for him to be able to get on a little bit better package. I think after the last 3 years, he's fully extracted that super stock package. We saw him on the front row of New Jersey, where it's a tight track where you don't need a lot of horsepower and it's all about chassis setup and things of that nature. So I really expect to see another step. We might not see, like Corey said, a position change, but I
Yep.
think he's going to be closer to the win time wise. And I think for somebody like that, he needs to look at that and really Hayden Gillum is his guy, right? He needs to, use him on the same package or close to Superbike-ish and be like, hey, if I can get close to that guy, Hayden's a fully fledged, everybody knows who he is. He has results, he's got championships to back it up. And I think
Yep.
that will give Ashton that little feather in his cap to possibly get on one of these next tier bikes and one of those teams to be able to jump in. And I think if Honda does make a step, he is a shoo-in to get the second seat.
Moving away from that, let's talk BMW. Obviously, Orange Cat has Jason Uribe and Sean Dillon Kelly SDK, I believe, let me fact check here, but I believe he was fastest at the test. The BMW, I have my thoughts and opinions. Curious to hear your guys' thoughts and opinions, but SDK on a BMW could be pretty interesting here.
SDK is going to be dangerous. This guy, I think, is going to come out firing. I think he's back at home. This is like V1 Tytler cycle, right? There's a lot of money, a lot of, good people. They have full alpha backing. They have BMW backing. I mean, this is BMW's hope to try to continue to win championships here. And American, I think SDK is the guy, right? We know how fast he was at the end of his year when he rode for,
Top
anyways.
row. Top row.
Yeah, Top Pro.
Top
There
Pro,
we
that
go.
was it.
Yeah, where he was at the end of Top Pro, and I think he's got even better crew behind him, more support from Alpha. He's got his mechanic. We know Hunter's over there with him. He's got a great vibe. I think SDK is going to be a threat. I have heard that he's thrown a few down, uh, down the road already in some testing. So I think for me personally, if I'm in his corner, I'm going, hey man, like let's get through the first couple races. We know you can win. We know you can run up the front. Let's points make prizes. So hopefully somebody can do that for him. And then Jason Uribe, right? Like we all know him. He's been around. He kind of went away. He's back. Great to see the guy get a good shot, right? He's on a full fledged, factory superbike essentially. Um, Interesting. I think it's got to be a little bit different for him. It needs to be a build year. Don't get too sendy too quick. From JD Beach, we know how hard the BMW is to ride. Cameron Bobier struggled at a lot of races with that motorcycle, and we know who Cameron Bobier is, right? Like the guy is, one of the best to ever do it in Moto America. So I think if I'm Jason Uribe, not to get frustrated.
Yep.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. I mean, I think the biggest thing is how much Cam crashed on the BMW, right? Like he's not a crasher, really. Throughout his career, there's like moments for sure, but as a whole, I wouldn't say Cam's a crasher, and he crashed that thing a lot. So
yeah, I would totally agree with that. I think that that's going to be the key. We will shift gears, kind of stay in the same lane. Who's got the best bike package on the grid going in round one? Not overall, but like who's got the best starting point package going in?
Oh, it's got to be, I would say, Bob or SDK for me. Those are probably, if you had to go in with no testing, those two are kind of know their drill. They know the bike very well, and you can expect them to be in 1, 2. If you were like, hey, first 5 minutes FP1 is the winner, I'm betting SDK or Bob.
yeah, I'm going the same. I'm going SDK. I think that alpha crew that he's got, Peter Schouten, I think is how you pronounce his last name. He's like one of the smartest guys in that whole BMW lineup worldwide. So yeah, I think SDK for sure is got the best package.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, with the Alpha crew, obviously we all know the legend of a story that was Toprak getting on that Alpha bike and doing blistering super bike pace laps on a super stock Alpha bike at Coda last year. So that kind of that's a feather in the cap for sure. We know that bike's going to be good. Who made the best off-season moves?
It's got to be Ben Smith, right? Ben Smith has made the absolute you know best move anybody could ever make, right? Like goes
Yep.
from a privateer Yamaha to the best bike and best team on the grid. So I think he has made by far the best off-season move.
Yep. I would say manufacturer wise, that team, the Warhorse team too, right? If you're looking at it from a team perspective, is like, yeah, you got Cam and you have upside in Ben. Like it's great. So, oh, you know
Maybe
what?
I got that question wrong then. Yeah,
No, it was good. That was by far the best offseason move for a rider without a doubt, for sure. Speaking of Cam and Ducati, James, you caught me out on this earlier. Cam P, Wrench Racing, Ducati. What do we think about Cam P? Obviously, Cam P's a heavy hitter. He's been on Ducati. What are we thinking Cam P wise?
Yeah, Campy has always had tons of speed, right? He's back with his father, I think, is the crew chief,
Yep.
and he's got Wrench behind him. We know that guy. Well, we've seen in past, he's maybe a little bit of a hothead underneath, but Bobby's success was under that team, right? So Wrench, put Bobby in in the window to get his Yamaha seat. So I expect him to be able to do the same sort of deal again. That puts now four Ducatis on the grid. And I think that we know in the back end, if they all bought that sort of, leased program, information, well, it might not get, between team in the back end when they have those guys and Ducati speaking with Ducati specifically, they're going to get a lot of that information, and that those four motorcycles could see the biggest gains during the year because the back end of Ducati is going to be wanting those boys to be up front.
Yeah, agreed. I think the biggest thing for them is the Ducati support, and if it's going to be spread too thin now with so many crews, and obviously the new bike's going to get the forefront of the attention. So that'll be the only thing that remains to be seen is if they're going to get really the amount of help that they need to run that bike. Now that there's three, essentially four factory level supported super bikes on the grid. For sure that they're gonna be in instances, I'm sure, where they're not going to get what they need, and it just depends if they're able to make do without having like a Corsa guy. I don't know if they have a Corsa guy. Like I don't know the deal with their team, but for sure
Yep.
we know that it takes one of those guys to run those bikes at the level that we see them running at most of the time. So yeah, I think other than that, there's no reason Campy can't be up front. And I think it's a great opportunity.
He's on the last year's bike, Corey, correct?
Yeah, he's not on a new bike. He's not on a new bike, which I don't know if a lot of people realize that or not. But he basically got Heron's bike from last year. Essentially, I think they just wheeled it over. I could totally be speaking out of turn on that, but I'm pretty confident that's the deal. And but even still, like you know, Warhorse had a Corsa guy all year last year, so I don't know that there's a lot of variables that could make or break that kind of effort for sure. I think Cam's working with his dad again. Is that what I saw too?
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. Robbie
Yeah.
Peterson, legend, by the way.
Yeah, so that'll be kind of cool to watch too. I don't know that they've worked together in quite a while. I think since the Road Race Factory days,
Yep.
um, and yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that dynamic works out. And if they have success, it'll be really cool to watch.
Totally.
It- Speaking, just final thought on that, Corey, bringing that up, I think is going to be interesting to understand because when we talk about having a Corsa guy in the background, you see Heron had some really bad days on that motorcycle, and then it was like overnight winning races. And I think that's the difference of having a Corsa engineer, being able to speak to, Bologna and have data and just have access. Now he will have, I'm sure, a lot of the data from last year to be able to look at. So I think in the beginning of the season, might be a serious contender until that new bike, but I don't think it's going to be long before the new bike gets up and running.
Yep. Yeah, it's a great call. Great call. All right. Well, we'll shift gears and just quickly touch on Road Atlanta. From a track perspective, obviously thinking about things like, okay, what bikes go well here? What riders go well here? I know we mentioned a little bit of it earlier. James, what do you think going into Road Atlanta? Who's obviously we've spoke a little bit about the favorites, but what's your preview thoughts on Road Atlanta for Superbike?
Yeah, I think SDK is kind of a shoe-in. He was extremely fast there in his rookie year,
Yep.
on that BMW, and I don't think nobody really expected him to be that fast. So he tends to go very well at Atlanta. We know that Cam Beaubier is going to be fast there. He does well. That turn seven to the kink is essentially a dyno run, and we know that the BMW and Ducati are going to be a shoe in for some serious speed and lap time there. It's a second gear corner, it's super slow, and then you go through essentially up to sixth gear through that kink. So I expect some time to be made. We know the Yamahas in past have struggled to make any passes or anything there. So but if I had to pick one guy right now, I think SDK is going to be in that 1, 2, 3, at Atlanta.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can't count, obviously can't count Bobier out. at
You
all.
can't.
Went
I think he's
1-1.
a shoe in. I think he's a
Yeah.
shoe in, man. Like,
Yep. Corey, any surprise watch outs?
I think Skoltz.
I think so too.
I
It's a
think
great call.
Skoltz, man. Yeah, I mean, in years past, if you look at some Westby races, he was always really fast there. So
Yep.
that might be my pick, honestly. I think that you got Cam B. They're going to be sorting out some stuff. You got same thing with Cam P. New bike, new crew, sorting out some stuff. I think it's going to be. I think it's going to be the attack guys and the Orange Cat crew. I think that they're going to be kind of the leading the charge, and then it
Yep.
just will be a matter of if the Ducati guys are able to get things sorted out, get their ducks in a row, quite literally, and play catch up a little bit. I think it'll be an interesting weekend. Like nobody really knows how everyone
Totally.
is showing up, so it's definitely exciting, and it's like it's here already, right? You guys are heading down there next weekend. It's pretty.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm ready. I'm ready to watch some racing.
Yeah, it's cool.
does anybody know if the Warhorse boys have had a proper test yet? Like,
Not that
that's
I
I
what
know
don't.
of.
scares me about, really going, hey, all in on Cam B. Like, you can only ride what you're given, right? And, just when you get new bikes, even if they're brand new, sometimes they don't work. We've seen that, and we don't get a ton of time in Moto America. And then you throw a rain day, and it's over. Like,
Yep.
you're
Yeah.
going racing Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, I think of the Ducati teams, they have the most ability to turn something around pretty quickly. Um, I don't know. I guess it depends how different the package is from what they're getting. Like BSB was a little bit different, right? Some of the guys that had their bikes was a disaster because they have to retrofit the Motec system to that
Yep.
bike, whereas like
Yep.
the Warhorse guys are getting the same package as what World Superbike has been running on for the last few rounds. So theoretically, with the full power of Ducati Corsa back in Italy, working remotely, and having somebody on staff on their own crew, like yeah, I mean, obviously, if the bike runs, Cam's going to be up there. We know that,
Yeah.
so
Yep.
that's kind of the question mark for sure. But yeah, like I said, I think Maddie's my guy to show up off the box and see how that thing runs. I think he's had the most positive testing from what I've watched.
Yep.
The bike runs, so it just depends if he's going to be able to keep up on the straightaways.
Yeah, no doubt about that. All right, we'll do one little closing segment here. We'll do a little lightning round. Quick questions, quick answers. Title favorite, James, where you at?
Cam B's got to be the title favorite, jumping on the best package and having, one of the best teams.
I'm going Bobby Fong, Bagger Bob. I think redemption, consistency is going to be a huge part of this year. Um, I think they're the attack crew is the crew to do that.
I'm gonna go SDK. That's where I'm at. I think those are three safe bets. We'll circle back on this conversation in
We'll have to
however
throw some
many
money
months.
down, huh?
That's so good. Sweet. Next one. Most likely first time winner. Obviously
It's gotta
tough
be Ben
without knowing.
Smith, right?
All right, I like that.
I don't know who hasn't won a race otherwise.
Has Hayden won a superbike race?
No, but I don't know. I might have to go with Ben over Hayden.
All right, I like that.
uh,
Brandon Pash probably hasn't won a superbike race.
I'm gonna go Escalante.
Ooh,
Ooh,
I think he's gonna send it. I think he's gonna send it in the rain, or a mixed condition, and
he
I
doesn't
think he
like
can.
those though. He's not a big mixed conditions guy. I don't know.
I'm gonna go.
He
I'm gonna
needs
think
it.
Poppy. This gonna be Poppy's year.
I like it. I
all
like it.
right. I'm going Hayden Gillum. Shout out to the Real Steel guys. 30 minutes over there, up the road from me. So put my faith on the 69 bike. Maybe at Mid Ohio, get a win at Mid Ohio would be unbelievable. Biggest shock of the season. What will be the biggest shock of the season?
I'd have
Something
to
that
go
we're
with
not.
Ben Smith. Ben Smith wins the race.
Okay. All right.
Even
I
better
like
yet,
that.
Ashton Yates wins the race. I don't know, but I think Ben
Yep.
Smith. I don't think anyone's talking about him, other than it's expected because of the bike he's on.
I like it.
Yeah, I think either of those guys just even on the podium.
Yep.
And then I think the biggest shock is Heron's not in Superbike. Like, I think that's
Yeah.
going to change. I think honestly, we're not talking about it. It's going to change the dynamic of the grid. Like,
Yep.
I think it's going to change the racing and a lot about the grid in Superbike.
Non-titles, like the best of the rest story to watch. Take a fifth place guy. Who are we looking at that's going to develop well over the season? Who's gonna bring that, like, mid pack energy toward the front as the year rolls on, if you will?
It's
I
gotta
got
be
Andrew
either, right?
Lee. Oh, I think, well, it's perfect you say that because I think Andrew Lee is going to be trying to chomp on Uribe's heels the
Yeah.
entire season. So I think he's got a massive chip on his shoulder. And if there's something that's the most non-title favorites mid-pack, I think it's going to be those two, one getting up to speed and one really pushing the limits of a bike.
That's great. It's
Yeah,
perfect.
I think